All right, man. Thanks for joining everybody who's tuning in. This is the very first episode of the operator to the operator. And interestingly enough, and very, very unique for today, Mr. Mike Morlino over here was the very first placement that we did. Mike, how long ago was that? I don't even remember. Like 16 months, 18 months?
Yeah, it's about, almost a year and a half. Yeah.
Yeah. So to give some context, Mike and I met through a group called 51 Vets, and 51 Vets is a awesome nonprofit that helps guys coming out of special operations transition into private equity, investment banking, VC, SMBs, basically that kind of like those target buckets of types of businesses. And you were just finishing up MIT, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Sure was.
Mike's going to talk about his background. I'll let him talk about how impressive it is, but I'll hit like Mike was finishing his MBA from MIT, and he was interested in it was like management consulting, right?
Yeah. Actually, that
Yeah.
was the route I was going initially.
And so we started talking, and it seemed like at that time that management consulting, they weren't hiring. Is that correct? What was the context behind it?
Yeah. That's a good question. Yeah. There had been really a hiring freeze across the entire industry when I had completed the MBA. And so, I really spent a long time beating doors down, trying to network my way in, and it just wasn't very effective.
Yeah.
Also, coming out of the military, the last thing I really wanted to do was travel frequently. But after spending some time in the MBA program, I was thinking, no, you know what? I could probably do this. I can travel again. I ended up doing a post MBA internship that had me traveling all the time. And that's when I realized, you know what? No,
Yeah.
I'm done with that.
Who were you doing the internship for?
So I did it with a private equity company called Windjammer Capital Investors. It was one of their portfolio companies out in Cincinnati, Ohio, called Pecan. It's a heavy equipment manufacturer.
Yeah.
Great experience. Got to work on the manufacturing floor. Working production line optimization, automation integration, which was pretty cool because I got to apply, a lot of the things I learned in the MBA program in operations management, along with the project management experience from my time in the military, to work in that role. And it was very rewarding.
So let's just dive into it right now before I talk about how we got you your first role. So give us your background. Like what were you doing before the military? What'd you do in the military? Like how did we get here today?
Yeah. So before the military, I was in high school, and so just, not too much experience there, but I knew that I wanted to be a SEAL from a pretty early age, 8th, 9th grade. So my entire high school.
What about, like, why'd you want to be a SEAL?
Something that appealed to me about, not only serving my country at a very high level, but also just the challenge itself. There were so many things that, that people will say about that it's impossible and all of this. And I just got the bug, and there wasn't really anything else I pictured myself doing. So I spent, in my entire high school years, really just running and swimming and preparing for joining the Navy, because that's really all I wanted to do. And my parents wanted me to go to college, and I had other plans. I just wasn't ready for that. So yeah, joined the Navy and when I was 19, and spent 22 years in enlisted, and spent obviously went to SEAL training, and once I completed that, spent about 5 years at SEAL Team 4, and then went over to Naval Special Warfare Development Group in 2007, and spent the remainder of my career there, about 15 years.
Okay. And when you were at DevGru, what was your role? What were you doing? I mean, you were there for a long time, so I imagine you had a lot, but what was your specialty? And then as you grew up in that organization, like, how did you get, like, what were your leadership roles?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when SEALs are, complete the pipeline the selection and training pipeline to go into dev group, they start in that assaulter role. So everybody, it has to serve in that role for a period of time before you can really specialize. I ended up doing a number of deployments with one of the squadrons there. And I had gone to sniper school previously at SEAL Team 4, so the opportunity came up for me to join one of the sniper teams, and that's what I did. And ultimately, throughout my period of time where I was conducting combat deployments back to back, I was doing that more and more in a sniper capacity.
Okay.
And so, I mean, it really depended, with regards to leadership roles, it really depended on what, we were tasked with that particular year. We might be, as an assault element going out collectively with our team conducting combat operations. There were times when I was, deployed to an outstation, which would be like a remote, essentially remote base in the middle of nowhere in Afghanistan, with a contingent of Americans and Afghan soldiers. And I was in charge of the entire outstation. So, all the logistics and all the security, and then obviously running combat operations out of there as well. So a multitude of assignments over the number of years. I also spent a couple of years as an instructor for the selection and training pipeline at Dev Group.
Cool.
And then on my way out, last few years, I worked in a project management role in our acquisitions department, managing technology projects, new technologies, working to test and evaluate those, and ultimately implement those into the team for those that made the mark, that passed the test. So it was it was a great experience. My entire time there, I had just the opportunity to serve in a number of different ways. So it was a great experience.
Awesome. Okay. How many deployments did you do while you were there? Can you remember?
So I did about 10 deployments while I was there. Collectively, I think it was closer to 13, including Team 4. But yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, the operating tempo there, we're deployed. We were, at least at the time, we were deployed every year. At least 4 months out of the year. Yep. We were gone, and then there were times out of the year, the rest of the year, when we were either training and gone away from home, or we were essentially deployed for a contingency operation.
Yeah. Yep. And so what drove you inevitably to go seek out a MBA from MIT?
Yeah. So I did my, like a lot of enlisted folks, at least on the soft side, I did my undergrad while I was in the Navy. I did it in business administration, which was miserable because, there are paths set up, there are programs set up to where, guys can earn bachelor's degrees with taking a minimal number of classes, maybe 9 or 10 classes. And I think I was so interested in learning about business that I decided to go this route. And at 20 or 27 or 28 classes later, I had my undergrad. But it was, but even after doing all that, I knew that I wanted to pursue more education in the business realm. I wanted to, in particular, I wanted to do the in-person experience. I had, doing the online degree, I was fortunate that I had that option, but I really, wanted that experience of that in-person, classroom experience. And so that's what really drove me to apply to the program at MIT. MIT is pretty unique in that it has 3 different MBA programs, the standard two-year MBA program that most people think of, the executive MBA program, and then something called the Sloan Fellows MBA program, which is a year. So it's essentially a 2-year degree compressed into 12 months straight, and it's for folks that have typically 14, 15 years of experience. So an executive level, age group, but just given the opportunity to do it full time. And so I applied, and it was the only school I applied to. And I ended up, I took a big risk. I made my retirement date the start date of that program, even
Nice.
before I was
Yeah.
accepted. And
It's called
I
confidence,
had,
ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, well, I had to pick a date. So, so I rolled the dice there. But fortunately, it worked out in the end, and yeah, it
Nice,
was a
dude.
great experience. Went by too quickly, but I'm glad I did it.
Nice. And so then it was a post within the 51 vets community about you were looking for other opportunities in Boston. And okay, that's how we connected. I saw your post saying, hey, you're looking for opportunities in Boston because the consulting thing wasn't going to work out, or didn't seem like it was going to work out. And so we connected. And I think at that time, I started to become very active in Twitter or X or whatever you call it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember how I crafted the idea to do it, but I basically took your profile. I said, hey, I've got this guy, it's been 20 years, served in the most elite SEAL team that there is. Sniper team leader, has an MIT from MBA, is looking for leadership roles in the Boston area. And I just posted on Twitter one night, I think it was like right after we got off the call.
Yeah.
And that shit just went viral.
I was
had
shocked.
over, I guess maybe not. It was viral to me at the time. I had over 100,000 views on it within the first couple hours. And it was at least 20 individuals reached out wanting to meet you. We had like the COO of like Toast at the time or something.
Yep,
It was so it was everything from PE to big companies to investors to small businesses, and everything in between. And I was just like furiously doing email intros between.
You were, yeah.
Yeah. And then that led to what you're doing today. So tell the audience, what's your role now? What are you doing? What have the last 16 months been like?
Yeah,
Let's dive
absolutely. Yeah. Well, before I get to that, I will say real quick on the X thing. I remember you saying that, don't waste time with LinkedIn. I've kind of sworn off the LinkedIn thing. I'm using X, and I'm thinking like, what are you talking about? Like this, like that's what I've been taught to do is just to network in LinkedIn. But the truth of the matter was, and then not to, it's no hit on it. I use LinkedIn,
Same.
all the time.
Yeah.
But I wasn't getting it. And when you put that out, the responses were immediate, but they were also very specific to what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, right away I had a lot of decisions to make, which is great. It's not in a bad place to be, right? But yeah, so now, because of that conversation, I'm now the president of the Boston Solar Company. Been doing that for, a little over a year now. We are an EPC, an engineering, procurement, and construction solar and energy storage company, serving both the commercial and residential markets in New England. The company does north of 20 million annually in revenue, and we've got about 70 folks. And it's been, it's been a great experience. I would say that, for somebody coming in from outside the industry, certainly, there's concerns that, that I had that of how people would take that and how people would, look at me and, whether or not they would actually listen to what I had to say. And the truth of the matter is I didn't do a whole lot of talking at the beginning, because I had a lot of learning to do. And I've been fortunate to have a great team, subject matter experts that have been in the industry for a long time. And I've been able to really lean on them, to help get me up to speed. It's been a great experience.
Isn't that in a way what you had to do in the military? Like, I'm sure when you're out there leading these outposts as a sniper team leader, like, I would have to guess, like, you probably weren't the best sniper, but maybe you had the best snipers with you. So, like, tell me about how that translated from, it's not about like being the guy, it's knowing the guys and leading them.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think somewhere along the way, as you learn leadership and you go through leadership experiences, you tend to at some point realize that a leader doesn't necessarily have to have all the right answers, right? And all the answers. But a lot of the answers are already there. They're in the minds of the people that have been doing it for a long time. So it's just really, coming in and creating an environment where, that really fosters trust, and that you're there to listen, which is exactly what I try to do. That people have solutions to problems. You just got to listen, and by doing that and ultimately implementing low cost, low risk solutions that came from my team, that's built a lot of trust, and you know what, a lot of these solutions have actually worked well. And so with that, it creates a lot of, when you empower people like that, it creates a lot of accountability and ownership, and so it helps in that regard too. But I've had that experience, I learned the hard way. At first I thought, when I first did those roles, that I had to tell everybody what to do, and that I had to have all the answers. And it couldn't be any further from that now, in this. And so I found, I think for me, being able to do this role and being able to work in the private equity environment during that internship, that gave me a lot of confidence that I had the skills. I had a lot of the skills, like 70-80% of what I do is managing people. And so I just had to be given a shot and, to prove myself.
So that brings up an interesting point. Do you think that, and I try to, I guess this is a subjective question. Do you think that you could have pulled off what you've pulled off in this role right now without the MBA?
And I think it would have been tough.
Okay.
I think it can be done. Okay. I don't think you need the MBA to do it. I think it just happened to be that was my way of getting the education and closing that gap.
Cool.
And learning the business acumen and all that kind of things. But I think there's other ways to do it.
Okay.
Whether that's actually experiencing like in that nothing can replace actually being in the business environment. So either that way, or whether you're taking financial courses on the side, just to understand how P&L works and what levers to pull and all of those things. I don't necessarily think you need to be an MBA to do that. That certainly helped.
Right. I ask that question because a lot of times I get asked oh, these guys have MBAs or not? And MBA is not going to teach you leadership. 20 years on the SEAL team, it's going to teach you. You're going to learn a thing or two about leadership, the good and the bad. But I've placed a couple individuals now. One is most recently SEAL, younger guy, my age, 36, no MBA, came straight out of, I think it was SEAL Team 4. I'll have to fact check myself on that. But he's 90 days into a business, having never spelt P&L before, and is crushing it. He's crushing it. Is he learning? Surprised. Oh yeah, he is learning. But I was on a call with him today, and he made the comment of he said, this is the first time since Buds that I have felt like I'm where I'm supposed to be. And that was in working with the guys, because he's in a home services business. I was like, oh, sick.
That's great.
Yeah. So how long were you an instructor for y'all's selection? What's that? Is it Green Team?
Yeah, Green Team. Yeah, it's roughly 7 months long.
Okay.
And I was there for about 24 months.
Okay.
That's a typical rotation.
So when you're looking, so you said you did a little bit of the assessment process to that. So when you're looking at guys that are coming from the other SEAL teams into Dev Crew, what are the things you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, obviously, as most people would guess, is tactical proficiency. Obviously, you have to be, you've got to be very accomplished in terms of shooting and being able to think quickly on your feet, make decisions quickly. But typically, I mean, it's not hard to find in the SEAL teams.
Yeah.
Do a lot of shooting, and guys are pretty intelligent, a lot more intelligent than me. But also, I mean, one of the biggest things that we would typically try to weed out are those people that are kind of in it for themselves,
Okay.
that aren't there for the team, that aren't volunteering for things and staying late to help other people. Like we see that, and those typically were the people that were first to go
Okay.
in
So
that
like,
process.
so what would be if you had to assign attributes to it, what are the attributes that you're looking for?
Yeah, I mean, besides being, a team player, team first, obviously, we're looking for those people that, take care of each other, that take care of their equipment, that
Yeah.
personal, that take care of the team's equipment before they're ever, you know, taking care of themselves, before they're, at the end of the day, they're doing all of those things, making sure that everybody's good, before they pack up to go home or jump in the
Yeah.
shower, do whatever to take care of themselves. So definitely, servant leaders, for
Yep.
sure, making sure that other people are okay. And because that's so important, obviously, throughout, the entirety of one's career, that there's going to be so many situations that, where it requires that. It's just you and maybe you're, a small contingent of people. You're in an unknown place, very few resources. You have to be able to support each other and rely on each other.
So how does that so how does that translate to what you're doing today? Because I know like it hasn't been easy what you're doing, like coming into that organization's first leadership role in the real world. Everybody has different motivators instead of just like, hey, yeah, I'm on the most elite SEAL team.
Yeah.
Like everybody's there because like, okay, not only are you volunteering for the military, you're volunteering for the SEALs, and then you're volunteering for like the tier one of the SEALs. How is that transition going from a place where everybody's like actively pursuing the volunteer of being there to where you were when you first came into Boston Solar?
Yeah, it's a little bit different, I would say, in terms of, you know, like you had mentioned, guys in the teams, they want to be there. They couldn't imagine doing anything else.
Yep.
Everybody's always under the microscope, and they're trying to do the right thing because they want to stay in that role. Whereas, you're, in the private sector, you're constantly worried about retaining people, and where could they potentially be going next? What are they thinking? Do I need to look at a comp adjustment? And so it's those things I think are just different.
Yep.
But I think when it comes to creating the team environment and to motivating people, it's really, I mean, it's very, very similar. It's just creating that environment where, the team trusts each other, that they trust that the decisions that you're making is for the best, in their best interest, for the company's best interest, just like you would be doing for the team. Um, there's a lot of similarities.
So what would it have been like if you look back at the last 16, 18 months, what were some of the hardest decisions you've had to make?
Oh, that's a good question. I would say, I mean, when I came in, the company we needed to make some cuts. Obviously, coming in, trying to retain our best performers and needing to reduce our headcount by about a third, was really one of my first actions, and so that certainly was
Yeah.
really a tough decision. Um, and then I've had to make a couple of decisions like that as we've restructured the company over the last year. Um, there hasn't been a shortage of those type of situations.
Right. Yeah. But it's always, I was faced with a similar position my first job out. It's like, okay, I went from flying an attack helicopter to all of a sudden, like we're letting a bunch of people go. And there's no manual for that. And
No,
in the military, it's like, you want to get rid of someone? It's like, congratulations. It's going to take you 3 years. Yeah.
exactly.
It's only once have I seen it happen. I mean, it wasn't even overnight. It was like over the course of 4 months. But
A lot of
the moment that
documentation.
the moment that it happened, it was like, all right, well, like this isn't going to end well for this person, but it still took 4 months, and then that guy
Yeah.
still had a job at the end of
He
it.
was still
So
reassigned somewhere else,
right,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
still gonna, he's
Still
like
get a
he's still
paycheck.
getting, yeah, he's still getting paid. He's not deploying as much, but yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a hell of a transition. What else during that transition of going from, a high performing team to having to create a high performing team? What were some of the other things you observed, things you learned? And frankly, like what are the things that you brought from the SEAL teams to the position you're in now that gave you an advantage?
I think the ability, I'll answer that one. I think, just having done a lot of planning and working with teams that are really focused on executing well, I brought that with me, or at least I'd like to think that I brought that with me, that mindset. Um, and essentially, like we do in special operations, everybody goes through training together and
Yep.
everybody's deploying together and you're side by side. So sure, there's an element of, a leadership level that's removed, but for the most part, those people that are in charge of you are right there in the trenches with you. And so I found that has helped tremendously, by coming in and into a company and saying, I'm asking you to do this, but I'm willing to do it right alongside you. It's leading by example,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's gone a long way, in terms of that. I think you asked another question at the beginning of
Well,
that.
that was like the
I don't do
last.
well
That
with
was it,
two-parters.
well, yeah. Sorry, it was like that was like that. It was building up to that question, so we
Okay.
got to the point. So if you look back at like your 20 years in, who was the best leader that you had? Someone you tried to emulate?
There were a couple of, yeah, and of course, anybody that has a long list, or I mean, a long career in the military is going to see everything. You're
Yeah.
going to see the good and the bad. But I had a number of leaders that, I think um, either didn't lead by example, kind of do as I say, not as I do, or um, just felt that they needed to tell you what to do all the time, but not necessarily, even if it was the wrong answer. They weren't
Yep.
really accountable for those wrong answers. That's gone a long way. It's with me when I've had leaders that have owned up to things, they've been authentic. It's like, yes, this guy has a great, um, you know, great resume. He's an incredible operator. He's you know highly decorated, but you wouldn't know it because he doesn't go around talking about it.
Right.
He's still doing the things, day to day with the team. And oh, by the way, he's showing a human side to himself, which I think goes a long way. But it's one of those things that, at least in our coming from, the special operations community and probably the military as a whole, there's that tendency that to not show that.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think when you don't show that and you're not authentic, um, um, I think it creates an environment of fear. And so on top of that, the best leaders that I've had have been those that have been, willing to raise their hand and say, "Hey, I screwed up. I made the wrong call." You know,
Yep.
taking, are accountable for their actions. Because that just goes a long way. I think regardless of whether you're in the military or in the private sector, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
But you don't see it very often.
You don't. No. And it's interesting you brought up that sometimes you know, the best leadership examples are leadership gone wrong.
Yeah.
And I had a leader at one point who, when faced with a tough decision that needed to be made now without all of the information, would just say, all right, I need to go chew on that for a second, and then go to his office. And then I'm left wondering, like, okay,
Along
do you
that,
want
yeah.
do you want me to make it for you? Right. And it's like, okay, so that instilled in my mind, like, all right, you don't need all the answers. Like, get the 20% that you need to make
Yeah,
it a decision around where you need to be, and then figure the rest out along the way.
absolutely.
Yeah. So I just remember, I can literally remember being in the hallway of the hangar and hearing him say, I'm going to go chew on that, and then go to his office, and me just like, I will never do that, even if I'm wrong. I would
You
rather
went to
be
bed.
wrong. Rather be long than go chew
And
on it.
disappear.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. All right. One last question for you, because some of the audience is likely to be newer leaders within businesses, whether they're guys from our community or guys that are, like a lot of the individuals, entrepreneurs, executives that I work with. If you had one piece of advice to give to someone who was going into a leadership position in a business for the first time, what would it be?
Keep your mouth shut and your eyes and your ears open.
Go. Yeah.
Um, I think that's probably an oversimplified way of saying, just try to absorb as much as you can. Um, you know, you'll find your place, but give it time, build the trust, build respect, to have people respect you, because when it comes time to being in that position, to whether you either need to make a decision or you need to get buy-in, you'll already have that in place.
Yeah. Buying. Yep. That was the first thing I learned. The 160th is just I learned it the hard way.
You know that phrase. Yeah.
Yeah. I came in. I hope he's listening to this, because I've nagged him about it before. But it was at the end of our green platoon.
Yeah.
At the end of our green platoon, you have a final check ride, and so everything you've been doing for the last 12 months, even if you've been crushing it or not crushing it, comes down to one flight at the company. So it's the first time you ever go to the hangar and see the actual aircraft, and it's extremely intimidating. I'd never seen a DAP before, and I'm about to go fly one. And so part of it, you have to get in front of the entire company and give your mission brief. And so I was like 26 at the time, like 145 pounds. And like, oh, wow, like I'm about to go stand in front of all these impressive individuals and give this mission brief. Oh, and by the way, if I pass in 2 days, I'm going to show up as the platoon leader. Okay. Like I need to project, I need to project confidence. I was like, I just need to project confidence. I think that's what I need to do. And so I
Yeah.
give the brief in true fashion, like fucked up most of it. And at the end, they just start peppering me with questions. And I remember, he later became one of my really close friends. One of the warrant officers asked me a question, and he was totally right. But I gave this answer that was not quite admitting that I had messed up, and more oriented towards like me projecting my confidence in my decision making. And I can't remember what it is, but brief ends. Everybody stops asking questions. I'm like, okay, I'm coming down off this, and a gentleman comes up to me, and this gentleman was one of the flight leads, and everybody knows who this guy is. Basically, everybody within JSOC knows who this guy is. Very extremely well respected, and if you look at him, it just seems like a really quiet guy. And he comes up to me, and he kind of looks at me, and he gets pretty close. And he's like, "Hey, sir, that's a pretty good brief. How about you try not being a dick?" And then he walked away, and I was just like, I was like, okay, all right, like,
Noted.
Projecting anything other than like that is myself is not going to get me here anyway. And I was very fortunate they invited me back the next day, and so began my lesson of just like you said, just like take it in, understand your surroundings, get the buy-in from the guys, and when the time comes that you have to make a decision, whether they like it or not, they're gonna respect you for it. So
100%. Really important. Cannot be overstated enough.
So yeah, and he ended up having the desk right next to me. So those first couple
Of
weeks,
course.
those first couple weeks are a little awkward.
A little weird.
But yeah,
Yeah.
man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time today. I'm sure, like,
Thank you for having me.
audience, if you want to connect with Mike, he's over on LinkedIn. I don't think he has an X account. Maybe we can get him to work that way and join that little
That's next. Yeah.
that little community over there. But I really appreciate the time. Like, so thrilled to have gotten you in that first role and what you're doing today, and looking
Thank
forward
you.
to what's coming, man. So thank you.
Thank you, Christian. Really an honor to be here, especially, given that it's your, first
Yeah.
episode. It's an honor. Thank you for having me.
You bet, dude. I'll see you later.